webinar. We're very excited to bring this to people. We know there's been a lot of interest and a lot of people asking for this. So we have got together an absolutely fantastic panel this evening. Look, I'm going to dig straight in and welcome, first of all, Crypto Eddie, a Tokyo-based blockchain expert and thought leader in the crypto space since 2018. As a prominent voice on X, she dives deep into the intersection of finance, AI, and cryptocurrency, offering unparalleled insights into XRP and beyond. A co-founder of onamipress.com, stacks.io, and the upcoming Three Big Waves, Eddie brings a wealth of knowledge and passion for innovation. Get ready for an enlightening session as she shares her expertise and forward-thinking perspective. How are you this evening, Eddie?
I'm very good, thank you. I want to thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to this.
We could not be happier, and I know our audience is going to be very excited to hear from you. Matt is also here, Matt LaRoche, a key team member of the Ainslie Crypto team based in Australia, based up here in Brisbane. Matt brings sharp insights into crypto markets and blockchain trends through his Crypto News and Ainslie Insights episodes, covering everything from XRP developments and stablecoin surges to global macro trends. How are you going tonight, Matt?
Well, that was quite a bit of an introduction there, Tim. I'm loving that. Who wrote that? That's awesome.
It was AI that wrote
Made me
it.
sound really smart.
I
So
took the leaf
yeah,
out of Eddie's book there. No.
oh, that's awesome. No, well, happy to be here and so thrilled to have my friend Eddie with us. She's amazing. So yes, thank you for coming, Eddie.
Look,
Appreciate it.
I have a whole heap of questions, and I will ask away all night if you don't interrupt me. So what I've got, I know there's a number of people watching this, and I don't mean you interrupting me, I mean our audience. So what I would love is, this is all about you tonight, and to get to the bottom of what you want to know, we have actual experts in the room here. So ask your questions in the chat. I'll be moderating through that chat and pulling those questions out. What I've done, I've got together a few questions here to sort of start us off by going through some of the fundamentals around XRP, then to look at the stack and the ecosystem. We'll follow on with a little bit of some specifics from Asia, because that's an area that I know Eddie will be able to talk about in quite a bit of detail. And I thought then we could potentially look at interoperability and other things that are happening in the space. But we will absolutely take your questions. I'll interject them with mine. So make sure you're asking them in the chat, and we'll get into all of that. But let's start off. Eddie, I'll give you the floor first of all. Talk to us about, for people who might be new to some degree, XRP fundamentals. Everyone wants to know, what is the core utility? Why is it that everyone's so interested in this? What is it beyond speculation that makes XRP really something unique?
Well, the asset itself, which is the native asset to the XRP ledger, is part of an open source chain that's been around for many years, back all the way from 2012. It's been battle tested. It is really fast. It transacts at a very low cost, fractions of a penny. Each time it does transact, a tiny bit of that native asset is burned. So it's a deflationary token as a chain itself, which is important. Not all blockchains out there are built that way. So it is has a little bit of a unique consensus too, different than Ethereum, different than Bitcoin, and it runs based on coming to a quorum with validators, and it is it's quite special, and the people who built it are quite special. There are 3 of them that are really credited to bringing it to the market, and that is Jed McCaleb, Arthur Brito, and David Schwartz. And so, yeah, so you've got some of the brightest minds in the cryptography space, and they really did set out to build a better Bitcoin. Now, the utility of XRP, the digital asset, of course, remains as a part of the chain that really prevents spam. That was its first utility, and then later on it became something that was used in payments, and it is really something that can be used as a bridge asset to bridge itself between 2 different sovereign currencies. And most recently, the utility of using it in DeFi mechanisms, a whole array of different types of DeFi, is super exciting, and it's fairly new utility for the digital asset. And I don't want to stop there, but that's maybe the three main core utility value props that the asset has. But there's more. Trust me, there's more. But those three are easy to stop at.
And if when we go down that rabbit hole, and we'll go down whichever path our audience wants us to, so make sure you're asking those questions in the chat. But when you go down that rabbit hole, you do discover that there are many other, as you said, many other little paths that we can go down where utility is obvious. Matt, I might just ask you, sort of on the back of that explanation, which really showed there is a lot there, there's those three pillars.
Yeah.
It's different to Bitcoin and Ethereum. If people understand Bitcoin maybe to some degree, or Ethereum to some degree, they get that they're number one and two most of the time. Sometimes XRP's snuck up there in the past. But talk to us about that for people who are new. What are they looking for if they're looking for XRP over Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Well, I guess most of the people in this space are looking for value moving forward. They're looking at maybe some opportunities of adoption, looking at what's going to get amounts of XRP off the market to be able to make it a little bit more supply demand fundamentals in favor of getting a return on what they invest. I mean, but there are some people that are actually genuinely interested in the technology and advancing the technology and building on the technology, looking to better humanity as a result of maybe some killer app that gets developed. So if someone's looking to get into the space and they're looking at Bitcoin as an option, or Ethereum as an option, or XRP as an option, you need to do your research, and you need to find out, where those value propositions are starting to evolve, grow, coins being locked up, things that can maybe push the adoption in your favor, and maybe a little bit of value coming back your way, which would be cool.
Do you think, Eddie, to back that up, do you think that XRP is better suited as a long-term hold? Is it something you trade? Is it part of a diversified portfolio? How do you think about it from that investment angle? Because let's face it, I mean, you mentioned people come for the technology, people come for the interoperability, all those other features that it provides, but a lot of people come because they just want to make some money.
Well, typically, XRP has been a community of a lot of hodlers, and that is really talking about people who bought the asset, saw its price action in 2017, became very excited about its potential, and many have been hodling and adding to their stack for a very long time. There are some people who have been good traders in terms of swing trading the asset, because for a very long time it traded in a very tight range. And so when you are a swing trader, sometimes you look for those assets that do have volatility but have kind of a predictable range. So there have been people who have been really successful at swing trading. And why do they swing trade? Well, most of them, yes, to take a little bit of profit, but most of them to take a little bit of profit and then re-enter back in to actually increase their stack. So you might have started out with 1,000 XRP, let's say, and if you have been a successful swing trader over the years, you could have maybe 10x'd that hold just from coming in and out over the period of time. We've seen some recent price action, though, that we've got a whole new slew of speculators in, which is great because we always want to see more retail speculation. Speculation has been driving the price for a very long time. That's not just XRP, that is the entire market. We have not really seen utility drive the market, although we're getting very close. We are getting very, very close to where the assets that are here based on speculation. There'll always be speculative assets. Always, always, always. Those won't go away. That's why we've seen the meme coins do so well the last couple of years. They're truly a speculative asset. They don't have utility at all. People have a lot of fun trading the meme coins, but getting to this point where we're starting to see the utility is coming on so hard and so strong that, especially when you see the asset being tied up in total value locked for some of these DeFi mechanisms, that has pressure on the supply. And at the end of the day, price action is really, yes, speculation, but supply and demand really do impact the price. And so when you see these DeFi mechanisms are starting to take a lot of the digital asset XRP out of the circulating supply, we're going to start to see some impact that will then you can point to that utility is driving the price. And
Yep.
we're just entering that now. So I kind of lost track of what your original question was, because there isn't just one reason why someone holds a digital asset XRP. There's many reasons. But I think the most is is people really believe in what the three founders built. They believe in the decentralized open source
Code and
the chain. I mean, it is something to behold when you talk about decentralization, and I think that many people admire that, and rightly so. And I think that with the new amendments that are coming and have recently been approved, which I hope we get a chance to talk a little bit about, we finally now are becoming a chain that is getting ready to really adopt institutional finance. And for a long time, there have been privacy and the amendments like the most recent one, the multi-purpose token that just went through, which can embed really rich data. And we've got privacy coming, like I talked about, the permission DEX. There are some features and benefits coming to the ledger that are going to allow for that institutional adoption, which is super exciting because prior to these amendments, it has really been the retail entities that have been using it. And originally when I first got into the ecosystem, we were using XRP to tip each other, to give each other tips.
yeah, I remember.
It was a transfer of value, and it was something that was built by Weitza Wind, who is part of XRPL Labs. He now has the Zaman wallet, and that was such a success, and it was so adopted that, again, that's another utility that really was embraced by the retail investors. And so I think that if you ask me why do people hold the digital asset XRP, some even now will tell you I hold it because I want to use it in a mechanism that's going to provide yield. And those new yield opportunities are now there. So yes, it's too hard to just give one answer why people hold XRP.
And I think if I was summarizing what you said there, I think a lot of it does come down to from the dollar side of it, people who are investing, it comes down to there is a limited supply. It is deflationary, like you said. It might be a very large supply, but when all of that's locked up in various mechanisms, you've only got one option there, and that's for the price to move higher if people want more of it, if the demand side of it increases. Matt, I want to address one thing that Eddie said head on, and that is the controversy that always surrounds this question of decentralization. Eddie made the point, it's a decentralized ledger that's been around for a long time. A lot of people don't believe that to be true. How do you address that question?
Well, Ripple controls, I think, something like about 4% of the nodes that do the verification. I'll try and keep it simple as I can. I think Ripple has 4% of the nodes, might be 7, I think it's 4% of the nodes that do the verification of the transactions. So of the 32 unique node listed, Eddie?
35.
35. Yeah, 35. So Ripple has 4. So there's 31 other entities out there that are the trusted core deciders of truth. But there are other validators outside of that as well that can look at those 31 and say, okay, give us some guidance here. With regards to someone taking the code and building whatever they want, absolutely. There's nothing stopping anyone building whatever they wanted from the code. So you need to get anything that needs to be, and I'll touch on this. We'll go back to Zhao DAO in a second there, Eddie, as well. Um, so if you know, if anyone want the amendments need to come over to make changes to the XRP ledger, there's a process whereby they need to reach 80% consensus for a couple of weeks. So that, you know, it gives time for people to look through the amendment. So it's still there is a larger community than Ripple that are making decisions. Ripple obviously has a fairly significant input, I would say, Eddie. I don't know if you agree with that with regards, but it's not mechanism wise, they can't. It's still the unique node list that it does the verifying and the amendments. And which I will touch on as well is the community possibly even getting a bigger voice in this matter with the new release of Zhao DAO. And hats off to Fabio for that one, and Santiago and so forth. The Zhao DAO is a community-based way of getting even more voice to which direction the XRP ledger can move forward. So it's improving over time. And Eddie touched on the fact that you know, there's all these new features that are starting to come out. Now, I remember back in 2018 when I was with SPQR Media, and we were doing deep dives like you wouldn't believe. And hat tip to my spiritual leader, Lee SPQR, on that one. If he ever hears this video, they were fun times. And there's a lot of research that we were doing at that time, and Eddie was doing a lot of research as well. And when we'd find something, and then we'd just about to put out a video, Eddie had put it out because she would have already found it. So suddenly we had to start from scratch again. So it was a bit of a competition whether she knew that or not. But
No,
we'd
I
have
didn't
Zoom
know.
meetings. Yeah, we'd have Zoom meetings between and go, oh my God, Aries just released the video. And now we've got to like start again with something else. And we were like, we would have it ready to upload and you'd already released it on your YouTube channel. So yeah, so we were doing a lot of research back then. There were a lot of links, and there's a lot of, you know, these links that are being discussed even today by other YouTubers, and screenshots of things like Vanguard and all this other stuff. And like they were things that we found, and at the time we thought they were pretty significant. But looking back at what we were researching, what we were finding, what we were linking, looking back at what we were kind of thinking that, you know, when X-Rapid went live, you know, where the banks would hold these XRP and send it cross borders and so forth. Now that I look back with all this acquisitions by Ripple, with these amendments that are coming through, boy, we were really looking at a very skinny stick figure of a use case back then, thinking that this was it. And the fleshing out that has happened since then, and you can look back and go, wow, there's been a lot of changes and potentially even pivots, you know. So you know, I'm excited for where this is going and the changes that are happening, and it's growing up. XRP Ledger is growing up. It's getting the functionality it always deserved. But hey, look, back in 2020, we were hodlers thinking that we're going to get a bull run. And then the SEC happened and we had to hang on for dear life. And some of us didn't sell and we just held through. So, you know, there are those guys and gals that just hold on for dear life, you know. But now it's growing up. There's opportunities that are starting to spring, and you know, not everything has worked. And that's the beauty of it. Like, you know, you give it a go, and if it doesn't work, you move on to some other things. But I couldn't be more excited with the way it's grown up from the times that I was researching, like that 2018 time. It's chalk and cheese, chalk and cheese.
We've got a few questions here, so we'll jump around a little bit, and then I want to dig into some of the things that you both have talked about there in terms of the actual innovations that we're seeing. And I think some of the ecosystem ones are quite fascinating. But just following up on what we're saying with that decentralization, can anyone, this is from Robert, can anyone start a node, or is a Ripple approval required? I assume approval required, therefore it's not necessarily decentralized. What's the quick response to that?
No, anybody can spin up a node. If you are one that can prove that you're stable and providing, you're a good actor, and what that entails is that you are uploading, when
Amendments
they have
yeah.
amendment, well, that you're actively participating in the dialogue for the amendments, but also too, when they have revisions of software come through,
Yeah,
are
versions of
you upgrading your machine timely? Because sometimes there's some slow people, and there's lots of ways that you can be defined as someone who's really a big contributor. And when you become one of those contributors seen by your peers among you, you can become part of the UNL, which is the validators that vote. And so anybody can run a node, and then to elevate to that point where you actually have voting power, you have to put in some effort and be recognized by the community that you are worthy of that position, because that is a position that is very important, and it's held by people who really, really passionately care about the XRP ledger. And so,
and you could argue that that's a reason why it has been so successful. It doesn't have to be purely decentralized game theory fighting against each other. It can be a community that generally is collaborating and saying, look, these are the people we want to be in charge.
It is, and I think it's working. And if Ripple were to disappear tomorrow, the ledger would still carry on. There would be absolutely no difference. They have done a great job at being a steward of the escrow, which I think is really something that's interesting when we talk about it at some opportune time during this call about what they might do with the more recent DeFi mechanisms. But also, too, they are, they're very passionate about bringing use cases to the forefront. Now, if you think about the ledger, they're really here trying to drive down that institutional adoption. And then you've got a lot of the DeFi and independent builders that are also building on the ledger, and they choose to build on the ledger because of its attributes. Yep. And some people even decide to fork the code, that they love the code so much. Axiology is one, and then they go and they modify it slightly. So Zahao is another that actually forked the code and then did the modifications, and they added hooks to their chain, which is a form of a smart contract. So it has composability. So this, anybody can fork it, anybody can build on it, anybody can use it, and it is not dependent on the one builder who does occasionally use it, which is Ripple. There are lots of other builders and use cases in the ecosystem.
And I think that's an excellent answer to that question that does come up. And I think you've addressed that really well. Matt, we've heard this term, and Jonathan brings it up. One thing that's totally new, this MPI multi-purpose tokens. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's new for me too, Tipper. We've been busy at work the last couple of days since it's come out as an amendment. So, look, I haven't got my handle over it yet. That is definitely a research point, but I'm going to ask
you because I know you'll be on top of that.
She's totally on top of that one.
I would love to talk about it, just because it's probably one of the biggest developments that we've seen for the purpose of tokenization. It's a multi-purpose token that allows the ecosystem to have an embedded, you can embed right onto the ledger custom code. So it'll usher in this institutional grade finance on the XRPL. So what kind of custom code would you put in there? Well, maybe you need to insert legal documents. Maybe you need to insert the issuer details of voting rights. the risk factors and disclosures which are required in the institutional sector. Maybe it's for supply chains where you can actually add the IDs. And so with the multi-purpose token coupled with privacy, freeze, clawback, and permission domains, these other amendments that are coming in combination with the multi-purpose token, I hate the cliche that says this is a game changer, but this is a game changer. This is now a ledger that becomes ready for institutional finance and banks. Even Ripple couldn't use it before because it was missing these components.
And that's what we find out in retrospect. Once these things come out, we go, oh, hang on, they couldn't have done these things because they didn't have this. And so now that we get these things starting to come out, you can start to have these aha moments, which are, you know,
Well,
this year it's almost weekly.
Matt, let's dig into that a little bit, because if you've got Ripple, the company, deepening those partnerships with banks, we've talked about it already. If we've now got this infrastructure in place that makes it appropriate for institutional players, is that a good thing overall? Because some people will argue the flip side and say, well, it becomes too centralized, too big end of town, that sort of thing.
No,
Do you see it differently to that?
I think Ari's right with saying that you're having top down and bottom up, and it's going to take both. And I think Ripple's strategy initially was always been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, it's always been a top down strategy.
Actually,
It may have,
it
is it
wasn't.
pivoted from that? It was from the, okay, because they were giving it out to people in the beginning, I guess community.
Before FinCEN came in on them
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
It
I
was
sat with them for 3 years. Yeah.
It was a peer-to-peer solution. It was a peer-to-peer solution.
Is that when they pivoted though? Is that when they've pivoted, you believe?
They did pivot, and they pivoted to institutional, going for the banks. The banks were a hard sell, very hard sell. And the original ODL, well, the original first use case of a bank using RippleNet that we know of, I mean, that was published not on a POC, not on a kind of secretive testing basis or anything like that. It was back in 2017 with Siam Commercial Bank when SBI used it in a concept phase, but turned into something that they ended up keeping and ended up continuing to use. It was before Ripple went to the managed wallet. So a lot of people think that banks are still going to buy the digital asset XRP to use it as a bridge currency. But that actual business model changed. They changed it from banks holding it to banks being able to utilize the digital asset on a managed wallet that they could dip into on demand when they needed it. So if they were a RippleNet partner in the RippleNet ecosystem, ODL was at that time. Now, things have changed even yet again because technology changes. Stable coins are now here. So what I'm talking about is really something that was from about 2018 when ODL went live to the height of when they went to managed wallets in 2021. They announced it during a regional swell event. And then now we've got a new phase where with ODL, it's now Ripple payments because it's not just XRP anymore. It could be UST Tether. It could be USDC. It could be RLUSD. It's whatever the customer wants. It's whatever has the liquidity. And it's become much more complex. So these pivots, if you will, have been based on technology changes, have been based on listening to what the customer wants and staying competitive in an environment that's constantly changing. So yes, so when you look at how Ripple has used the digital asset XRP, it has changed over the years, but there's one thing that has stayed consistent. And this is, for for all the people who might be critical of Ripple, their Ripple X arm is spending so much time and effort and putting the most talented engineers, a brand new one, by the way, too, that just came on board in the last 6 weeks. Really impressed with. Well, you've got Mayuka and a whole list of engineers that are working so hard to perfect use cases that expand the use case of the digital asset XRP. And that's fantastic. So we're really lucky to have Ripple in the ecosystem for that. But again, it's not just Ripple that's bringing value to the chain. It's a chain that many people use, and it's a chain that everybody is really invited to use and can use it anytime with no permission.
I'm going to come back to you in a second to ask you specifically about the stablecoins, because I think that's an area that people are really interested in as one of those use cases that could be we don't want to use the term game changer, but we will come back to that. Matt, before I do, just is that explanation that we just got, is it really that we've got XRP here becoming a full stack Web3 finance platform, or is its heart still in the fragmented set of tools? How do you view it?
Fragmented set of tools. I think those tools are actually starting to work together like cogs. I think there's these cogs that were missing that are now starting to be engaged. And even a smaller move in some of those cogs can create a bigger move in another cog. Yeah, I think XRP has been missing a lot of these things that are now starting to come to market, and it's something that I think that whether it was planned, whether it was forced upon them by regulations that were not in place. The lawsuit is another thing that caused a lot of movements into other areas or other use cases. But I think Ripple as a custodian, as a steward for the XRP ledger and the escrow, that was called in. Was that 2017? Was the escrow, or was it late 2017? Was the creation of that escrow? I think, Eddie. I think it was.
You're in that neighborhood. I'm sorry,
close.
I don't
It was
remember
close.
the exact date.
Yeah. So it's it's done a great job, and like the stablecoins that Eddie was mentioning, we used to think that the banks were going to be holding XRP, and then they would send XRP across, but that hasn't eventuated. And what's going to be more so the case is holding these stable coins in stable value, parking these stable coins for yield issues and things like that.
And that's what I want.
The XRP is still. I mean, if RLUSD is going to get some adoption, and it continues to get adoption, it's going to move on various rails. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're going to have some extra information that needs to be part of a payment, it'll probably move as on the Ethereum chain. With regards to the if there isn't all that extra information that's required, potentially let's move on the XRP chain. So there's still use for XRP as far as its initial thing was payments. It does a great job. It does a great job in forming a part of the tech stack. As far as is there a payments layer? Yeah, you can use it here. And I mean, we're sending and receiving XRP every day at work, and I can let you know that it's a joy to use because it's so quick, cheap, and fast, and arrives when it's supposed to. And you can move on to the next trades. Now that's going to be something that probably the rest of the world is going to enjoy as well, as far as part of their payment stack. But as far as this, what we thought was going to drive the banks to buy and the banks to hold, they'll be holding something else, I think, but probably still using that layer to move things very fast and efficiently.
This is what I really want to dig into with you on the stablecoins here, Eddie, because when I think about what the US government, as one example, has made explicitly clear now, it's that US treasuries are going to be tokenized, and that is going to form digital dollars. They're not being specific which I think is a good thing in saying that it has to be in one platform, it has to be any particular thing. They're saying this idea of US dollar dominance throughout the world is best achieved from their perspective by having it in everyone's hands, and digital rails are a way to do that. How do you view the truly like it could be massive, the implication of having US dollars that can move around on any of these chains, regardless of which it is. But when you start talking about some of the other features that you've mentioned coming to the XRP ledger, surely having native US dollar tokens on that are backed by yield bearing treasuries is just massive.
Well, okay, so it's a big topic to talk about. I think the interesting thing about Ripple is they're going to find a lot of use cases for RLUSD. And it is backed in majority of it in the US treasuries, which is like most of the US backed stablecoins are. I think it is a good thing for the dollar. One of the first people to highlight that before it was really spoken about was Brian Brooks. He is the old comptroller for the currency of the comptroller. And he said this during the Biden administration, and nobody really heard him, or nobody really paid attention to what he was saying. But eventually, I think a lot of people in the world, and especially in the United States, realized, by gosh, he's right, that if the US dollar, which is really in demand, and this is also, Ripple has always been a company that gives the customer what they want, which is one of the reasons why they are so successful. And if the customer wants to have that settlement in USD, they can now choose to do so in RLUSD. Before they issued their own stablecoin, they were using USDC. Almost 20% of the USDC that was minted was coming from Ripple. They also used USD Tether. They used XRP. It was really based on the corridor, the liquidity, and what the customer wanted. But when most of the world, and that's why USD Tether has been so successful, most of, especially the developing world, or the world in which economies have inflation that is really damaging. I mean, we can talk about many countries that have problems with inflation, or governments that have been very poor stewards of their own sovereign currency, etc. They've wanted to have the US dollar, and now with the easeability to get the US dollar and not have to have a US bank account, it's mind-blowing what it's done for these people in the world in terms of bringing down the democratization of finance for everybody, and the easeability for everyone to be able to participate with the US dollar. It's just, wow.
Well, and
I don't think
that's a really
foresaw it.
good point. I'd like to just sort of push on a little bit further. I think when you said give people what they want, I think a lot of purists would have thought we're going to a world where everyone's just interchanging. I mean, even in the original XRP sort of approach, it was just, we'd all just be swapping crypto for crypto, and it would all just seamlessly work in the background, and we'd all be happy to hold crypto. The reality is that people didn't go that way for the reasons that you mentioned, whether it's the unbanked people of the world just looking to the US dollar because it's the only thing they know, for whatever reason. That's what people wanted. So you kind of got to give them what they want to build that momentum. Do we end up in a future where people maybe go, well, I don't want the US dollar, I'd rather hold the XRP native token and be trading with that? Possibly. But when we're not there yet, this is how you get the adoption, isn't it?
Well, also, and I don't want to not talk about Bitcoin. There are a lot of people who prefer to hold Bitcoin as their store of value. And that is, in my opinion, perfectly understandable, okay, and I encourage that, and I don't think it's only going to be the dollar. So depending on your ethos, depending on where you are in the world, depending on how you feel about even these stable coins that are backed by, you know, a treasury that is really still being printed out of thin air, you know, there are still a lot of complications and a lot of complexity that you know, is not solvable in just one conversation or in a few decades. I don't think it's going to be an
I,
ongoing
th-
process.
I think as a sort of a multi-hop, and excuse the pun there, but as far as getting yourself the stepping stones across the river, there's going to be a point where the US dollar has got its functionality at the moment. It moves on the old rails of Swift, which is trying to improve. We can go there later on. But to get across to the other side of this, something's completely potentially there's going to be these stable coin things where the legacies, the big boys, are going to be happy to land, and because they're going to get some sort of a benefit from it, whether that be cheaper cross border, whether that be yielding products, they're going to get benefit from it. So as that sort of stepping stone thing goes across the river, then maybe the US dollar, maybe things change with that again, and maybe you do go to a digital asset as what you want to hold. But again, it's an
Well, okay,
evolution.
Matt. Let's
It's an
test that.
evolution.
Let's test that. Right
Yep.
now, we've got gold at all-time highs, just like absolutely vertical. Does gold have a
Yep.
place on the Ripple ledger? Is the infrastructure there for that to happen right now?
To tokenize gold on the XRP ledger completely.
Oh,
Yep. And it was
sure.
done back in 2014 in Singapore.
Yeah.
As a test subject. I think it was a Singapore company. I know there was a company trying to do it here in Australia. How successful that is, I don't know. But as far as if you want, I think that's a fantastic idea. Like if you had gold, the stability of gold, but you had the divisibility of crypto, but the rails to move it on in absolutely seamless for an nth of a cent around the world, and it involved the XRP ledger. I reckon that's a marriage made in heaven.
Well,
And spending, as far as your gold, you spending it. Maybe you get to park those. And here at Ainslie, we have AUS and AGS. Better put that in there. But if you have these tokenized products, maybe in the future there's an opportunity to place them somewhere and get some yield, and be able to, suddenly have a little passive income coming there where you can quickly and easily spend that little bit of passive income and not touch your principal. But it moves on, the value is parked in a certain way, but it moves in a very different way. And I
Well,
think
I
that would be
think,
perfect.
and I think you might have hit the point Dominic makes here, where he says, as all fiat declines, crypto becomes stronger. Why hold Bitcoin when you can hold a percentage of all money in the world in the rails? And I mean, that is a big, important point that you're making. There is value in
Yeah,
the picks and
the
shovels. Like
protocol.
that's the analogy
Yeah.
that's used in the gold area.
Well, it's the network. As the network grows and the network becomes used, obviously its value can improve accordingly. So yes, as XRP ledger, XRP holders, we have a kind of an ownership of the ledger, I suppose, and in some sense. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, as long as you have trust in the person who's done the tokenization and is holding that gold, they're doing proper attestations and you've got proper audits and I think that it can be used as a collateral in other yield mechanisms. It can be used as just a pure, in every sense of the word, just a divisible store of value that can be used every day in the form of, gosh, you even see it in the form of a credit card now. So I think gold definitely has its place. Maybe even more and more as the debt increases. Many people will argue that. So I don't want to. Yeah, I think the store of values is being the discovery of store of value is still occurring, and I think gold is going to be always there, part of that group, as well as all the assets that have demand and functionality and utility. And there's many in the space. We've got thousands and thousands of tokens, but I think there's going to be a few that finally will flush out as being the ones that remain. The interesting thing is with stablecoins, because a lot of these companies are issuing, and as the interest rates go down, if they are using the treasuries as a form to back it up, as the interest rates go down, the yields also go down for that issuer. What's going to happen? I mean, this is just a question that I think we all are asking ourselves in the space. What's going to happen to all of those stable coins that have been rushing to the market? Are we going to see consolidation? Are we going to see a lot of them not survive really low interest rates? Mm-hmm. Are they going to have to diversify into other products and other services? That's probably a yes. Are they going to daisy chain with each other? In other words, people who don't have the means to prop up a stablecoin by themselves, but yet they'll fall into another issuer's licensing and daisy chain their services into that ecosystem. I mean, this is yet to be seen, because we know the interest rates are declining, and it's really going to put some pressure on these issuers. That's just something we all should be very much aware of.
That's a really good point, and absolutely something that I expect to happen, because it's effectively being forced to happen, at least in the US, with the current administration, who are putting a lot of pressure on interest rates to come lower. It's a genuine question. Look, I can't miss the opportunity while you're here, Eddie, to talk about what's happening specifically in Asia, because we often hear about what's going on in the US. It's obviously a focus. I've sort of titled this bit Adoption, Regulation and Utility, if we can think about what's going on from that Asian perspective. But I just want to tie it in with a single 4 letters that Phil's put in there, HBAR. He said HBAR, and I think what he would be getting at there is that, there are other obviously competing platforms out there trying to do similar things. And this is, in my opinion, it's somewhat of a game of regulation, influence, utility. All of that comes into play, because there can be other ways to solve the problem, for sure. But if you've got Ripple expanding so rapidly in Asia, does that really give it a foot in the door that other platforms haven't been able to get?
Oh, this market is huge. The market is so big that there's not just one chain or one company that can wrap it all up. And so I think HBAR has a lot of problems to solve, has a lot of use cases to tackle, and a lot of success stories still to follow. So I just don't even worry for a second that HBAR is going to be relevant and one of those chains and assets that do very well in the future.
And so from the Asian perspective then, how is the work that Ripple's doing driving the partnerships? How does it all work?
Well, there's so much going on, especially when Ripple created their Singapore office. They really did some great work with the Monetary Agency of Singapore, or MAS, depending on how you want to say it, where they gave them one of the first licensed entities to be a major payment institution. That was a big, huge jump for Ripple, and that gave them entry into the market in Southeast Asia, particularly a very, very big jump start. And Fiona Murray, who is the managing director there, and just kind of going back to your question of how do you describe Ripple as a company, because they have been changing from just a payments company to now what Fiona describes as a one-stop shop digital asset infrastructure. And that's something that she gave in a Bloomberg interview in June. And you're going to find that with the 70 billion in transactions that they've done so far, majority of that came from Southeast Asia. Now, they've got some new developments going on in Africa. The Middle East has really come alive for the use of RippleNet as well. But the XRP adoption and utility in this part of the world is super, super strong. You've got the largest private bank DBS, who just partnered with Franklin Templeton to launch the trading and lending of tokenized money market funds, and they're going to do it on the XRP ledger. The largest crypto conference just took place a couple of days. It just ended a few days ago, which is Token 2049 in Singapore. And the reason why it's the largest crypto conference in the world is because there is so much going on with digital assets in this part of the world. And so I think that when you look at individual countries, for example, there is a big reason why there was Apex that occurred in, that's a big event that Ripple puts on mostly for its devs, but they've kind of expanded out beyond the developers. So Apex was held in Singapore this year. And then we've got the big, beautiful conference that just occurred in Korea. It was sponsored by Ripple and Doppler. Doppler Finance is one that uses the digital asset XRP to provide yield to people who use their protocol. And Korea, if you don't know, they have 20% of the circulating supply of XRP. That's wow. Incredible. Yeah. And so they really do love XRP. And at that conference, Axelar debuted their MXRP token. That's going to drive more XRP sales with the way that mechanism is designed to buy more XRP. So it has this continual pressure, the buy pressure on the digital asset. Vivo Power also is on stage there. They are committing millions to F assets with Flare and also Doppler. They've decided to do a DAT, which is a digital asset treasury. And of course, they're using the digital asset XRP for their strategy. Marcus Imfunger, who was interviewed by a lot of press in Korea, he really drove home the fact that the digital asset strategy using XRP is transcending its role as a transactional asset, I'm quoting him right now, to an asset that's fit for financial products. That's a very, very important statement that he made. That's an interview that just took place, like, it was published on the 2nd of October. That's how fresh it is. So you're really seeing that the digital asset XRP is being set up with its ledger in the APAC region as a hub for Ripple. And they're gonna focus on Singapore, but there's gonna be spokes. One of those big spokes is gonna go to Korea. It's also gonna have a spoke that goes to Japan. There is somebody, if you really want to get down into the weeds, if you will, there's a gal by the name of Mai Furukawa. She is heading the XRPL Japan initiatives, and she does so with somebody who's got a nickname Nabe, and also TQ, who is a phenomenal developer. They are having a big hackathon in November, which is getting support from XRPL Commons, which is like an accelerator that's located in Paris, France, for the ledger. And also SBI Ripple Asia, which is the entity that Mr. Kitao has a 60% stake in with Ripple. This is a separate entity, a company that falls under his umbrella. So SBI is the first company in Japan to be licensed for stablecoin payments. That happened in March 2025. This guy's a maverick, and he is going with no stone uncovered. He's in deep with USDC. He's got a MOU to also distribute RLUSD, and he's also working on a yen-backed stablecoin, the JPYC. If you really want to see what's going on in Japan, you always need to follow what's going on with Mr. Kitao. He uses XRP to pay gamers. He uses XRP to pay his shareholders who own SBI stock. he uses XRP in every way he can
Yeah, he gives
possibly manage.
rewards. He gives
Sorry?
rewards as well. He gives rewards as well to
Yeah,
to new stockholders or new he's amazing. And seeing his presentations that go for like slideshows, he sort of we used to pick through them and just look for anything that it was amazing. He's amazing, and SBI
yeah.
is going to be a
I could
is
go
and
on
oh
forever and ever about Mr. Kitao, and I'm sorry
He's
if I'm
certainly someone who's putting
wordy.
his XRP where his mouth is, by the sounds of that.
well, I mean, it's I if these guys have got some XRP and stuff, I mean, at some point they're going to potentially be looking to park it and start to do some of these earning things that Eric brushed on there before with Vivo Power and Doppler and Flare as well. So there's
And I'll bring
some
up one
opportunity
more.
to soak some supply up there.
Yeah, one more use case that's coming out of Japan, and it's recent, just in the last couple of weeks. There's a tour company called Tobu. They're going to launch a payments mechanism app on the ledger that is in the form of NFTs. The NFTs, think about a fan-based economy. The NFT will be able to be used as a payment for whatever's been decided. Like, say you go to Kyoto and you want to go to one of the famous shrines there, and in that shrine they might have a special souvenir just for people who have the app, and then you can exchange your NFT as a form of payment to get that special souvenir from the shrine. So this is just one kind of wild. I just made that up because
Yeah, but that's
that's
ground
not
up
actually.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's ground up stuff. That's
yeah,
sort of anyone can kind of come up with those ideas and start to get that squeeze happening between
yeah,
the institutional and the community, really.
yeah. Hong
Look,
Kong is making huge changes. They unveiled a more lenient capital requirements for banks to own crypto and to hold crypto. This is really important because Hong Kong was very aggressive, then they stepped back, and now they're being very aggressive again. They're competing to be the hub of this area. They're competing against Singapore, they're competing against Dubai, and now you just can't not say it's not just Singapore, Dubai, and Hong Kong anymore. You have to say everybody's competing now against the United States.
Yes.
With the new administration, I think it's really been decided that, from a lot of people's perspective in the U.S., we are going to be the hub. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in Asia for sure.
Look, I'm very conscious of people's time, and we started a little bit late, so we'll go a little bit longer just to wrap this up tonight. I think I'll get from each of you your bit that you want to talk about in terms of the tech, DeFi, and interoperability, because if we think about that, there's a lot there. I know, Matt, you're very passionate about some of the things that are going on in that yield space, for example. It's something that you like to talk about quite a bit. So I'll start with you, Matt. What's your thing that you want to leave people with that is something they can get excited about from the tech, DeFi, interoperability side of things that we can expect to see coming?
Yeah, well, the DeFi situation for me is I think it's a bit of a game changer. I like the fact that you're putting an asset that you may have held for quite some time to work. I like the fact that you're able to lock it up and it's no longer out there circulating to be forming part of the circulating supply. It's locked up, it's wrapped, it's put into another protocol and so forth. And for me, my biggest yay moment of the month has been Flare's releasing of the F asset protocol. That was my it brought so much joy to know that and it's shown some really good liveliness and adoption early. And then look, they're doing a very staged approach, and I think that's it's been like that for years, trying to get things right. Because look, in the future, Flare may be handling a lot of XRP coming in, and you'd want to make sure that things are correct and that they work. And I think they've been very cautious and very studious and so forth to be able to make sure that what they did was good, solid, and strong. and the F asset system launching. It's been going for 2 weeks now, and they've had two lockups or two tranches, I suppose you'll call them, bring in 5 million XRP, and they got locked up within under 4 hours. And then it was so popular, they've gone, well, we need to do something else here. So we'll do time zones. We'll do the Asian European, and then we'll do the American. And they took like, basically under 2 hours, I think 80 minutes or 90 minutes for each to fill up. So the demand there, that's what I love to see, is the demand to put this asset to use, finally put it to use where it can be, we get the benefit of the use, but also the locking up. But it also shows that if this is just the regular punters that are just basically putting that in there, but quite frankly, I think there's about 770 million flare that have been locked up in a collateralization of those assets coming on. Now that's only effectively one airdrop for the flare community on a monthly basis, so it's only tiny to begin with. But I think with these extra your Vivo Powers and your I think it's Weavis and some other ones there that are starting to have these treasury XRP treasury functionality, these guys are going to start to bring the assets to these protocols and start to park them. And if there is that collateralization that is required, and it's not all just flare, it can be USDTO, I think it is a layer 0 stable coin that can be minted, or created, minted, and use that as collateral. But at the moment, it's about 70% of flare is being used in that collateralization. So that's a really good sign that the asset itself is being used to collateralize these XRP coming on. So I'm really excited for what's coming with regards to institutions bringing those supplies on chain and having to be collateralized. So I'm excited for XRP community, and also very excited for the flare community as well.
Eddie, I'll give you the final sort of talk through of what is exciting you the most about this tech, whether it's the DeFi angle, whether it's the interoperability, whether it's something completely different. What is it that you want to leave people with to say, look, this is why it's so exciting to me. This is the thing I'm most looking forward to coming down the road.
Well, I mean, there's just so much, and I agree with Matt wholeheartedly. If you want to follow what's going on the tech side, I think Mayuka, who is an engineer for Ripple, is a great follow. But if you want to follow in the DeFi, wow, I can't just give you one protocol to follow, because just since we've opened up the XRPL EVM sidechain, there's been an explosion of DeFi, CeFi, and a hybrid of both. So Flare is doing a real, in the pure sense of the word, DeFi. And with F assets, the caps are selling out. Yeah, some of them under 90 minutes. It is increased their TVL, their totally locked by some 28% since they started. And they just are getting started. But there is, like, if you like pizzas, tacos, or hamburgers, there is as many different choices out there in the DeFi world, with more markets, Doppler, Strobe, Epic, Midas, which also uses Flare, believe it or not. That's one of the options that they make in terms of creating that continuous flywheel effect, the money glitch, as they call it, where they keep buying more XRP. There's Firelight, which we don't want to forget to mention with their liquid.
Yeah, Firelight's huge.
Yeah,
Firelight is huge.
I just can't tell you that since F assets went live, since the EVM sidechain is now available and opens up, with using XRP as a gas token. Now, some people will say, oh, we want everything to happen on the mainnet. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother video. We don't want to open that can of worms. I totally understand. We want as much of that utility happening on the mainnet than happening in other ecosystems. But at the end of the day, if XRP is in demand to make the entire ecosystem hum, I'm okay with it. I'm one of those people that are totally okay with XRP being used in another ecosystem because it is a gateway in using the digital asset XRP as a gas token. Some people want to see more than just a gas token. I think a gas token, again, is just one use
One
case.
use case. Yeah.
And
It's
just
another use case.
bring it all on. And yeah, shout out to Hugo. And he was very careful and very methodical, tested it on the Songbird. I think he really also cares passionately about the community, doesn't want to bring any, he didn't rush any product to market to make sure that everything was safe and sound for its users. And his product is very unique. It's very decentralized. It's collateralized. It is amazing. And I just, yeah, I think I agree with Matt. I think from a perspective of coming from a retail investor, I think the decentralized finance and the centralized finance and the hybrid and everything in between is the most exciting.
Look, thank you both for so much information. I know we've got lots of comments in the chat just thanking you both for all that depth, the things they wanted to know, really digging into those weeds. It's so valuable for people because, I mean, there's a comment here, information is the true wealth. So thank you, because it is, you need to understand what's going on to know where to operate in this space, and it is tricky. There's a lot of competing tokens out there, so you really do need experts in the space to tell you the reality of what's going on with any of them in particular. And XRP, I know, is one that our Ainslie community just loves. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Eddie. Really appreciate your deep dive on that tonight. I know everyone does.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Tipper.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Look, everyone, thank you for watching. If you have another token that you would like us to dig into, we'll try and dig up. I don't know if we'll be able to find an expert quite as across everything as Eddie is. We really do value her knowledge of all things XRP. But if you have other tokens or other webinar ideas that you really want to see a deep dive on, let us know. We'll do our best to try and cater for them over time. But once again, thank you both for participating. Thank you for all those wonderful questions. Thank you everyone for watching. And